Welcome back to another episode of Two Knicks Chicks. I'm your girl, Lady, and the Chef. Got lots to discuss and cover today. I do want to discuss Julius Randle getting an extension with the Knicks as he was eligible as of yesterday, the 3rd. So I was kind of waiting around to see what was going to happen with that as far as what were they going to do, meaning the front office with the Knicks as far as signing Julius Randle. But if you don't know, Randle is set to make just under 29 million for the upcoming season. He is eligible to sign a 181.5 million extension over 4 years. Um, so that's where he stands at right now. It remains to be seen if he's going to make an agreement with the Knicks as far as making that happen. We all know, which we should know by now, that the New York Knicks do want to keep Julius Randle. So there's no, I know there's been a lot of talks about whether or not the Knicks should keep Randle. Um, People had Randle's name on the trade block and whether or not saying that the Knicks should get rid of him. I don't think that the Knicks should get rid of him. We saw what Randle was capable of doing back in January when the Knicks were hot. With a healthy Julius Randle and a healthy OG Anunoby, the Knicks were having their best season record month since the 90s. So he's a pivotal piece in this Knicks conversation. And this is not going to be an episode about whether or not Randle should be traded or kept. I think the more focal point today is the Knicks should be signing Randle, but I think the bigger question is, does Randle do what Jalen Brunson did and say he's willing to give the Knicks a discount? If he is willing to give them a discount, I think the question is, how big of a discount is he willing to give them? So I think that there's that trickiness there to it. And I'll get to my reasoning why I say there's this trickiness as to why that the Knicks front office has as far as signing Randle. Right now, the Knicks are still in negotiation, as we know, because there was no update as to whether or not they were gonna or did them signing Randle to a contract extension. Um, I think at the very worst for Randle, he does have a player option for the 2025-2026 season for 30.9 million. He doesn't have to accept that if he doesn't want to. But if he underperforms this season, then he may end up taking the extra year. But Randle can sign a 4-year deal now, but waiting another year could give him a larger contract with the Knicks. So the reason is Randle's 10-year experience. Basically, what that means is if he waits until free agency in 2025, he could potentially land himself a $313 million deal over 5 years. That's pretty much around $63 million a year. So that'll be a huge payday out for Randle. So I think that's kind of like, you know, the Knicks trying to work out the deals. And I think the problem is that with the huge signing contract of OG Anunoby, the extension for Tibbs, and Jalen Brunson, it makes it a bit tricky because the Knicks are trying not to get themselves caught up in the luxury tax cap space, put themselves basically in a hole because of what they paid out for OG, Jalen Brunson, and Tom Thibodeau. As a Knick, Randle did average 22.6 points per game, 9.9 rebounds. He did win the most improved player, becoming the franchise first player, to make All NBA since Carmelo Anthony. So, you know, the league doesn't just hand out MVPs and most improved to just any old body. I think Randle's tenure with the NBA in general, he's grown as a player. And I think that like every player in the NBA, we all have our gripes or icks that we have with players, right? When you have certain players who they do certain things and you're like, why? And that goes across the board for everyone. It's not just Julius Randle. I think Randle had addressed a lot of those things that he used to do that were like gripes that we had with him. But I think he's grown a lot as a player, and we saw that he was on a tear before he sustained that shoulder injury, and was making waves in the NBA last season as a Knick. So I do want to clear up that Randle, and I said this on the last episode, he's not an injury prone player. He unfortunately sustained injuries from, players who just were playing dirty. And it happens, it can happen in any sport where you sustain an injury. Now, an extension for Randle, I do want to continue on with this contract extension talk. An extension would render him ineligible for a trade for 6 months after signing. So that's a key thing to note. But I think when you look at the contract deal that Randle's up for, the extension contract deal that Randle's up for, in comparison, if you look at a player like Pascal Siakam, comparable level of talent to Randle, right? They're not the same player, but pretty comparable. Even though he is a different type of power forward, he just signed a 4-year, $189.5 million extension with the Pacers. But I think that when you look at with the Knicks, again, a different organization, they're dealing with different types of money. I think there's a few factors that's causing the Knicks to have some type of hesitancy and pause before they pull the trigger and give Randle what he's asking for. A few of the reasons: Randle hasn't played since January because of the dislocated shoulder. That's for one. A massive contract extension carries risk, without evidence that his game is going to be on a high note following the procedure. And I think also with Randle having a very high productive regular season, Randle has yet to carry that production into the playoffs. Like, we haven't been able to see that because he's been injured. So there's that other question mark there. I think Randle averages great numbers in the regular season, but then it doesn't correlate into the postseason. He was averaging 17.1 points on just 34% of shooting and 15 ugly postseason performances from him, that weren't his greatest feat that we could have saw from Randle. And like I said earlier, I think the other factor you have to think about also is the fact that the Knicks just gave a contract extension to Brunson, even though he gave the Knicks a huge discount, but they signed an extension to Brunson, paid OG Anunoby out the wazoo, signed Tibbs to a contract extension. You brought over Mikal Bridges, and not to mention you just signed over Precious Achiuwa. So the Knicks money is I don't want to say it's funny, but they don't really have it like that to be giving out this high amount of money. And I think that this front office has done a great job so far, not giving out such a high amount of money to players who haven't really proved it yet that they're worth giving the money to. Now, I know there's some question marks, and people say, well, the Knicks gave OG Anunoby this huge contract, and the dude can barely give you 60, 65 games in a season. And I agree. There's no pushback from me on that. That's very true, as Randle, as OG Anunoby does sustain injuries. But I think that when you look at a player like OG, all in all, what he brings to this Knicks team is truly invaluable. And I think that the healthy question does come up as whether or not can he be healthy for the whole season. I agree. OG Anunoby has had this issue where he's hot, he's good. We see the production, we see the Knicks winning, we see the impact that he has on the floor. And then, unfortunately, he sustains an injury and then he's out for a while. And that kind of hurts the team. The Knicks have been able to recover from injuries and still keep the boat moving. But, I think that question can be brought up as far as Randle. No, he's not injury prone, but I think the question lies for Randle. can Randle be able to, one, stay healthy throughout the regular season, and then two, I think Randle has to really prove himself that he'll be able to capitalize and bring his production to the next level for the postseason, as we really haven't been able to see that from Randle. And I was hoping to be able to see that from him this past season, as he was playing on a high note back in the early part of the season, especially during January when the Knicks were just, all things were clicking. They were playing great. So, I don't know. I think that right now, the Knicks front office, Randle and his agent are pretty much trying to figure out, what are they going to sign Randle to? What can Randle agree to? I'm sure the Knicks are definitely trying to get Randle under his asking number. I've said this before. The Knicks front office have done an excellent job at getting players under their asking price. So I think that that's the main thing. And I'm sure there's this question of, he's coming back from a shoulder injury. Randle has said that he feels good. His shoulder feels good. But I think that there's this, like, he's such a pivotal piece to this team. But it's like, well, can he stay healthy? And then also, will he be able to, if he stays healthy, will he be able to perform in the playoffs for the Knicks? So I think that there's those questions that lie there as far as what he's going to be able to do. But nonetheless, I'm very confident they'll be able to come at a comfortable number, and that the Knicks will be able to sign Julius Randle to a reasonable contract. I'm hoping Randle will be able to see that this Knicks team is heading towards a championship contention, and that he'll want to maybe possibly, take some money off the table. And, I'm not saying that he's going to do what Brunson did, but hopefully he may want to do a little and take a little money off the table and say, okay, because I'm trying to win a championship, I'm trying to compete for that, and where this team is going, that maybe he'll do that. So I don't know. I think that we still have to wait and see. I was hoping that there would have been some kind of update from yesterday, but yeah. So I'm sure within the next few days, hopefully, they'll come to an agreement, and we'll know that the Knicks are locked in and set with Julius Randle. So we'll see. I'll still keep an eye out. I'm going to be looking and seeing what's the update on Randle. But nonetheless, Randle will be a Knick. I'm very confident in that. This Knicks team needs Randle. They need the points and production that he brings. And I think that once the signing is done, I think the biggest thing for me is not just seeing what Randle does during the regular season, but I think more so seeing what Randle could bring in the postseason. Like, that's where we really need the help in the playoffs. When you're going against teams turn the level up to a different notch in the playoffs. And I want to see what Randle could do in the playoffs, where a lot of that pressure fell on Jalen Brunson. So he's a pivotal piece that this Knicks team needs. So again, like I said, this is not a Randle should he stay or go conversation. He's staying. I think that the numbers have to work themselves out, and then Randle, that will be that. And then the biggest question is health wise throughout the regular season, and then what can he do, or rather, can he, not so much what he can do, but can he turn it up to the next level for the playoffs, in which this Knicks team needs badly in the playoffs, right? Because we know the Knicks can make the first round and the second round. Is getting past that and get into the finals and past that. So I'll be staying tuned to what this Knicks team does in the next upcoming few days, as far as signing Julius Randle and keeping him around as he's needed for this team. So we'll be looking out for that. In other news, the Knicks signed Chuma Okeke from the Orlando Magic. I feel like I've seen Okeke maybe in that one game that he had a good game against the Knicks. Go figure. So Okeke became an unrestricted free agent with the Orlando Magic, who failed to make a qualifying offer to keep him around during the offseason. The Knicks signed Okeke to an Exhibit 10 contract. Those of you who don't know, an Exhibit 10 contract is a 1-year minimum salary, non-guaranteed deal. So if the player doesn't make the NBA roster, the contract usually includes a provision that will pay the player as much as $75,000 if he spends at least 60 days with the team's NBA G League. So that contract, pretty much that Exhibit 10 contract, includes an invitation to training camp. So Okeke played in 47 games for the Orlando Magic this past season. He had an 11-game stretch in January, which he averaged 24.5 minutes of playing time per game. His second highest great game he had of the season was a 15-point game that featured 4 or 5 shooting from the three, which was a 98-94 victory over, go figure, the New York Knicks at the Garden. And I feel like that's where I remember him because, one thing about the Knicks will allow a no-name player that no one knows about come in and just shoot lights out and have a great game at the Garden. And when I've seen many different players' interviews, a lot of them say, like, when they know they're going to play at Madison Square Garden, they're hyped to play at the Garden. And it makes them want to play better and harder because it's MSG, it's the world's famous arena. So players just want to play at this all-time high. And I think also it's just this thing that people want to play. I think people still have this like notion that this is the old Knicks team where they sucked and you could just come in and score 50, 60 points and you were like a nobody and no one knew who you were. But like till this day, that still exists. And I think that I don't know why the Knicks allow players to just come in the Garden and just do whatever they feel like doing, right? That's something that the Knicks have to get better at. And guarding those no-name guys, and they're just shooting the lights out, whether it's from beyond the arc, it's the mid-range, just going crazy. Like that has to stop as well. So yeah, he had one of his second best games against the Knicks last season. He averaged 15 points, which is, again, we don't even know who this guy is. Now, here's my thing with him. This guy has had several injuries. He tore his left knee during the NCAA tournament Sweet 16 game back in March 29th of 2019. That injury caused him to miss the entire 2019-2020 NBA season. He was drafted number 16 by Orlando, so he missed his entire first season. Then he missed the final 10 games of the 2020-2021 season because he sprained his ankle. He only played 45 games in the 2020-2021 season. Last season, he averaged 2.3 points, 1.7 rebounds, and 9.5 minutes per game. Now, when I look at a player like Okeke, I don't even know if he's going to make it past, technically the Knicks signed him, but it doesn't mean that he's going to actually get any playing time. I feel like there's plenty of guys that are on this team that are ahead of him. And one of them, who I'm going to bring up next, who are vying to get a playing spot on this roster. And to try to get a playing spot on this New York Knicks team is really tough because Tom Thibodeau has a trust issue. And unless he knows your game and sees what you can do on and off the floor, not just in practice, but in real game situations, you're not getting any playing time against playing under Tom Thibodeau. Also, Tom Thibodeau, as we all know, keeps his rotations really small. You're lucky if you get 9. You're lucky if you get 9. And I think, which is a conversation for a different day, the conversation comes up with that limited rotation of Tom Thibodeau playing players too many minutes, et cetera, et cetera. Listen, we've had that conversation, so we can have it again. But that's the whole nother conversation with Tibbs overplaying guys. The goal is for next season Everyone is healthy. Tibbs don't have to play players 40 plus minutes, 48 minutes a game. He shouldn't have to. As long as everyone stays healthy and guys are able to play their actual playing role for the NBA, for basketball. So yeah. But the Knicks signed this guy to this Okiki, signed Chuma Okiki to an Exhibit 10 contract, which again is a 1 year minimum salary, non-guaranteed deal. So he may not even make the roster, but I'm not sure what's going on there. Why the Knicks? I don't know. I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole of that whole tandem because it'll take me down a rabbit hole. But that's neither here or there. uh, that's the Knicks' problem. That's not my problem in that regard. Other player news: Jericho Sims. Now you all know that I've been bringing up Jericho Sims. Um, I've been bringing up Jericho Sims and how I'm uncomfortable with Jericho Sims being the backup center for this New York Knicks team. And I stand behind that because Jericho Sims has been in the league for a while now. And I know Diva Locks has pointed this out, how Jericho Sims came in on the same class with Miles Deuce McBride. And Deuce has fought through the trenches. He was going back and forth from the G League to the NBA, going back to the G League, then playing a couple of spotty minutes, 2, 3 minutes here, 4 minutes here, but just kept working, kept getting better at his game. And we saw that on the floor. And that's part of the reason why the Knicks were able to not only get Deuce McBride to a good contract, but Deuce has proven why he deserves playing time. And then when I look at Jericho Sims, I feel like his game hasn't improved yet. I'm going to say yet because, listen, I love when players can make me eat my words and make me be quiet and show that, like, look, I've been working on my game. Like, show me when you're out on the floor. I haven't seen that yet with Jericho Sims. But I think where his game is at right now is that it's still at a very basic level. And my thing is that when you're in a professional league such as the NBA, you have to be able to elevate and each year get better, get better. And I haven't seen that with him. And I think my biggest issue with that is that when you look at like Mitchell Robinson, who you're not expecting a lot of um, an offensive tone to his game. I was hoping for that. I really was when it came to Mitchell Robinson. But that's just Mitch's game and where he's at. But my issue with Jericho is that we don't need a part two of Mitchell Robinson in regards to we don't need a player who hasn't elevated their game. Like it can't be two of y'all. And and Jericho doesn't do what Mitchell Robinson does. I'm very well aware of that. But what I'm saying is you have to put in the work in the off season to get better at your craft, to get better at the game of basketball, to get better and elevate and add to your game. And I'm talking about even the littlest things, like even defensively, like not jumping at every hesitation that you see when you're playing defense, not committing so many quick, easy fouls, and those little things, or not being able to add a little floater to your game. I mean, hell, Hartenstein's floater wasn't all the way perfect, and sometimes he didn't even look confident doing it, but he damn sure did it. And too bad that the Knicks didn't even want Hartenstein shooting threes. Because OKC may say, go ahead, you can shoot the three. But according to Hartenstein, the Knicks didn't want him doing it. But Jericho Sims, that's why he lost his spot. He lost his spot playing let me rewind before that. So a year ago, Sims tore his labrum and cuff tendon in his shooting shoulder. 2 years ago, Sims underwent surgery to repair a torn ulnar collateral ligament in his thumb, which that injury wasn't really disclosed. And then with the Knicks, like his tenure with the Knicks, Sims has been very limited to pretty much just putbacks and shots around the rim, right? Very, very limited. But Sims has lost his spot because Hartenstein was playing at an all-time high, right? He knew he was eligible for a bag and for a big payday. Sims lost his spot to him. And then when the Knicks brought over Precious Achiuwa, who isn't this mega star, he lost his spot to Precious Achiuwa because Precious Achiuwa was given, it was just more effort, more dedication. The basketball IQ was a bit more up, a few levels up than it was what Jericho Sims was showing us. So Jericho Sims has to figure out a way to elevate his game and get better. I know with Jericho Sims, his 2.1 million contract will become fully guaranteed if he's not waived before August 16th, which I don't see that happening. Again, this Knicks team is full of surprises. Anything is possible. But they're keeping him around. I feel like Jericho Sims' position is kind of like Grimes. When you don't have like a solid backup replacement, he falls into that position because they don't really have another option. And part of that is the Knicks' fault because the Knicks were banking on getting Hartenstein, which in turn led them to take too long to find a solid backup center, which the Knicks should have really did. So they, I'll give them a C minus on that. That's one thing that I will say that the front office did. They were a little too lagged on that. They were banking so much on getting Isaiah Hartenstein that they lost out on that because they couldn't pay him what he was looking for. And then because they were waiting so long and banking on getting signing Hartenstein, every other center got signed to other teams. So there was no one left but scraps. So the Knicks had to have to just keep Jericho Sims. So his position reminds me, like I said, of like Grimes, where you don't really have other options. So you kind of just felt like Grimes fell into the starting spot. The Knicks thought they saw something. I'm going to be honest, I really didn't. I didn't. I got more excited and hopeful and saw the potential when I saw Deuce out there on the floor than when I saw Grimes. And the same is with Jericho Sims. When I see Precious Achiuwa, who misses easy close baskets, right? The defense can be stronger, but it's just more passion out there on the floor. You can see the potential there for him to get better. But Sims' position was replaced by Isaiah Hartenstein and Precious Achiuwa because he had his own struggles, right? So his role diminished with this Knicks team. But this year, Sims, he's been working out. He's training with Mike Bibby. Bibby has emphasized that he's working with Jericho Sims to have some sort of offensive inside game. We'll see. I loved Mike Bibby as a player. I'm a firm, I'm very pro. If your game isn't where it is, first of all, you should always be a student of the game, right? And perfecting your craft. And I also think that players should work with former NBA players to work on their game. And that's what I was alluding to with Mitchell Robinson just a few minutes ago. I was hoping that I would have saw that with Mitch and that he would have worked on his game, but I've given up on that. And it's not too late for Jericho Sims to work on his game and elevate his game, but he should have been doing that, right? But I'm not going to go down to shoulda, coulda, woulda. What I am going to say is I'm happy that he is working with someone in his game. And again, hopefully he can make me go, wow, this guy's worked on his game. Look at what he's doing out there when he's getting the minutes. Because the Knicks are damn sure going to need him. You can't rely on Mitchell Robinson to play heavy minutes. If you play Mitchell Robinson heavy minutes, in turn, you're risking him getting an injury, and then you miss out on him for most of the season. And then you got to hope that he'll be back to play for the playoffs. So, yeah, I don't know. I hope that Jericho Sims is developing some sort of offensive repertoire under his belt, working with Mike Bibby, and that he's working on footwork and not falling for the hesitations on every hezzy that he sees when he's playing defense, because this man loves jumping in the air. The player just does that and he jumps in the air. So, you know, I'm hoping that Sims is able to really come out next season and show improvement, not just on the offensive end, but on the defensive end. Like that same defensive prowess that Mitchell Robinson gives, I need Jericho Sims to come out with that same energy. You know what I mean? Like you gotta be a beast in the paint. And players make players earn their way to get their basket. So, you know, I'm just hoping that we can get the same energy that we was able to get from the combination of Mitchell Robinson and Isaiah Hartenstein defensively and something there offensively. I'm not expecting a whole lot of points, but I don't want to see him relying on just the lob, which I think that the Knicks should go back to that for Mitchell Robinson and at times for Jericho, of course. But that is not going to cut it. That's not going to cut it in the long run. So we'll see. I hope Jericho can come out and really find his way back in the lineup with this New York Knicks team, as they're going to need it. But for right now, the Knicks signed Precious Achiuwa to a 1-year deal. I think it's at like a $6.6 million deal. And I know other teams were interested in Precious Achiuwa. So I think the Knicks are lucky that no one snatched him up. But I think part of that was also that Precious Achiuwa was also looking to stay with the Knicks. He's from New York. He wants to play here. He wants to be here. He's found a home here, right? I think, and that's important too, like when players go down with an injury and your number gets called, that's why you have to stay ready. So that way when Tibbs puts you in that game, you can go in and prove throughout several games that, hey, I deserve some playing time as well. And again, Precious is no perfect Patty, but he showed in a few games, a few pivotal games where he's had some great defensive marks that he's made. You know, nice blocks, defensive stops, active hands, active feet. And again, like I said earlier, every player you're going to have these icks about them that they do or that they don't do in a game, right? No player is perfect. And I think every Knicks player, we have our own gripes that we have with each of them. You know what I mean? That they do. And I think that's just part of getting better. And this team has to work on cleaning up even the little things. And they will get there and they will do that. And including Precious Achiuwa. So I'm hoping that he's another player who can come out and show that he's gotten better, that he's stronger, that he's, you know, the coordination is there. When he's close to the basket, he's able to put the ball back in the rim and not miss a close, easy basket that you could have laid up or dunked into the rim. And just defensively, you know, being more in tune defensively. Not that he wasn't always, but I think back when we was in round 2 last year in the playoffs, or this past year in the playoffs against Indiana, Precious was guarding Pascal. Pascal Siakam had his way. against Precious Achua and Isaiah Hartenstein. But in round one against Philadelphia, Precious actually defended in the small, tiny window of minutes that he got. He actually defended Joel Embiid really well. So, and throughout the season, he's had some great moments throughout the season because when Randle got hurt, and in a small window when Isaiah Hartenstein was out for a few games, Precious Achua got the minutes. So this is why Jericho lost the spot because Tibbs trusted Precious and gave him the opportunity, and he proved he deserves to get playing time out there on this floor. So kudos to Precious for staying with the Knicks. I like him on this team. My only concern is in the long run, he's not as tall. He doesn't have the wingspan or the height like a Mitchell Robinson or Jericho Sims. But I think that if the Knicks can monitor Mitchell Robinson's minutes, because we need Mitch to stay as healthy as possible throughout the regular season, and they need him for the playoffs. I think it's important, imperative that Precious Achua steps up as well as Jericho Sims. They have to. They have to. It's going to be so keen that both of those guys step up to the plate. Um, and I think everyone else, aside from the major name players on the Knicks, like the other guys who don't get minutes, like stay ready. You know, that next man up mentality is like it's a big thing with this Knicks team. And I think Precious can step up to the plate and give what we need, but I think the height difference is what hurts us. And that's something that's a little bit of a concern for me is because what happens if, you know, not even that Mitchell Robinson is hurt, but like you put in Sims at times, maybe at times you put in Precious, and it without aside from Jericho Sims, if you do Precious and then what you do, sometimes you'll have Randle playing the five, which is still small ball. Now, Randle and Precious are very strong, as well as Jericho Sims. These guys, very strong. They hit the weights, the physique is there, the physical capability is there. But I think that Randle for sure can play that bully ball. We've seen Precious do it. I want to see Jericho be a little bit more that passion, you know, that physical capability. I want to see it there on the floor, as he's not really a vocal guy as much. So you're not going to see much of that passion come out like you see with other players. You know, we've seen Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, when they get like really, you know, you get animated and the passion comes out. I haven't seen that with Jericho Sims. So maybe it'll come out at some point in the season. I don't know. But that is my biggest concern when it comes to the center positioning is when you do a substitution and Mitch has to get a breather and you put in Jericho, but if one of them gets hurt, now who do you go to? Is it Julius Randle and Precious Achua? And then now they have to be like the sub fill-in at the five position. And how sustainable can that be throughout the tenure of the 82 game season and then going into the playoffs? So I think these are things that we have to kind of keep in our minds and wonder about with this New York Knicks team, as far as that center position, being that we weren't able to secure another center for this team. Salute to the chat. Walter Blackman, salute to you. Thank you for tuning in as always. Jay Boogie, salute to you as well. He said, good morning to this beautiful day of life. Blessings, blessings, health, happiness to my Knicks family. 2 Knicks chicks is in the building. Hit that like button. Salute, salute, salute. 3 capital S's. Salute to you, Jay Boogie. Wesley Robinson, salute Queen. I'm checking in from Strong Island, New York, the home of Rakim, Public Enemy, De La Soul, EPMD, Craig Mack, Ashanti, Soul For Real, Biz Marquis, Dr. J, Jim Brown, Danny Green, Keith Murray. Salute, Wesley. I think I had seen you here before. Salute to you. Thank you for joining. Allah Y, salute to you. Said peace. Good morning. Wait and find out. If they don't do it in a very near future, it doesn't mean anything. The mindset of talking less was initiated by Randle, of taking less, excuse me, was initiated by Randle. So we just have to be patient. I agree. I agree. And you know, like I said earlier, the Knicks are not in a rush to give Randle this extension contract. Like, there's no rush to make this happen right away. I think that they're waiting and seeing, and I think because also they're trying to get the numbers right. Like, if Randle's not willing to give the Knicks a discount like Jalen Brunson, then right now I think the Knicks are just going to keep throwing out offers on the table because we all know this Knicks front office, they love to bargain shop. And every contract on this Knicks team that I've looked at, it's under what the initial player was asking for. The initial player and their agent was asking for. So OG's was well under what he was looking to get. Um, Jalen Brunson was well under. I mean, he took a discount, but it still would have been under. And I believe with Randle, it'll be the same thing because the Knicks also have to be mindful. They're trying to not get themselves caught up in a frenzy when it comes to that luxury tax cap. They don't want to screw themselves over. So, Just Nick, salute to you. Always joining and tuning in. Johnny Davis, salute to you. You're an intelligent woman, direct and straight to the point. Let's go Knicks. Exactly. Let's go Knicks. Q Burrow brother, salute to you. Said a stretch big off the bench after Mitch will suffice. Make your opponent struggle on defense. I agree. I agree. I just think as long as the stretch big can be that defensive presence as Mitch is, because Mitch is a force in the paint, and he really makes players think twice and alternate their shots and their baskets if they want to throw it down with a monster jam. Mitch is not. Listen, you're not coming in and doing that with Mitchell Robinson. This guy, like the wingspan, the way Mitch, he does this thing where he like backs up on his toes and he's waiting, he's watching, he's like a snake ready. Like, go ahead and try it. You're not going to do that past me. And even if it does happen over Mitchell Robinson, he's relentless. He's not going to let it repeatedly be a thing. So I agree 100%. You got to make the opponent struggle on defense. And that's what I'm looking for from Jericho Sims. I'm looking for him to make the offense struggle and think twice about what they want to do. Think twice about throwing that ball into whoever's down in the paint and they're calling for the ball and want to make their move. I don't want players to think they have it easy when Mitchell Robinson is on the bench and they can have their way because Jericho Sims is in there. You know, because Precious Achiuwa is in there. Absolutely not. And this is why it takes, like, for next season, the Knicks defense has to, like, it has to go to the next level. They have to really lock in and be stronger defensively. Because just as well as offense wins games, defense wins games as well. But I want to see that same defensive presence that we see from Mitchell Robinson. I want to see that from Jericho Sims. I want to see him, you know, I'm not asking you to do these like special, spectacular, you know, plays. And again, I'm not expecting him to give what we saw from Isaiah Hartenstein, you know, but if he could take a little bit of a sprinkle from Mitch and a sprinkle from Isaiah Hartenstein and implement that and add that to his game defensively, man, that'll be a huge help because now Tibbs can allow Mitchell Robinson to actually catch his breath, to sip on some water and then come back in with some fresh legs and not be winded, and he can come in and play defense. So it's imperative that Jericho Sims steps up and you know defends the paint like no other, as Mitchell Robinson would, you know, and not allow guys to think that they have an easy pass in the paint against him. Like you can't allow that. So it's so important that he comes out with not only the aggressiveness, but he can't afford to get in foul trouble, like I said, so quickly. That was an issue this past season when Jericho would get whatever little playing time he did, because again, his playing time diminished. And that says a lot about Precious Achua. It proves that he was playing a lot better than Jericho Sims. Precious Achua came from Toronto. Tom Thibodeau, he gave him a chance, but he proved why he deserved playing time. So, I really think that it's so important that Jericho comes out and really steps up to the plate. Like, it's now or never. You've been a Knick for a few years now. Prove yourself why Tibbs needs to give you playing time. Make it hard for Tibbs to say, well, damn, I'm trying to balance the minutes between him and Precious, and it's hard for me to do that. But I need him to step up to the plate and be a lot more aggressive. That playing passive and like you playing in the G League, or like you're not ready for the NBA, enough. Step it up. Nia Walker salute said, I just feel like Randle is going to have a great season. All the media coverage I've been seeing is undervaluing Randle. He's our clear-cut number 2. He's just not being treated that way. No. And you know what? I'm not even questioning Randle having a great season. I truly believe Randle's going to have a great season. Randle has come a long way, not just from the physical aspect of the game, but mentally. You know, mentally, he wasn't as strong, and I used to dictate how he was going to play, because he used to always complain to the ref. He used to get inside his head. He was overthinking, you know what I mean? And that was hindering his game. And once he was working on his breathing exercises and just mentally locking in, Randle let a lot of that stuff go and just played the game of basketball. And he worked on his game and got better. And we saw that this past season. I was like, wow. Even I was like, Randle really worked on his game. It looked like he took his game to the next level. And I'm sure he's been doing that this off season, not just rehabbing his shoulder and staying in shape, but working on his game. And I think that Randle, not only is he going to have a good season, but Randle has to prove, forget the money, forget the contract. Randle has to prove that you've been a New York Knick for a long time, but he has to prove that he's not just a good regular season player, but that he can be great in the playoffs. Because we haven't seen that version of Julius Randle yet to the fullest extent. So if Randle can stay healthy through the regular season, be healthy for us in the playoffs, this changes the dynamic for the Knicks, because now you have another weapon. And not that I don't want to just say it's just Randle and it's just Brunson, because that's not what I mean. They also do have Mikal Bridges. You have Dante DiVincenzo. You have Josh Hart. You have OG Anunoby. So they do have the options now where they can go to. And, and I'm going to be very honest. A lot of people, when it comes down to OG Anunoby, question the Knicks giving OG so much money, because everybody's just looking at the injury timeline and how this guy suffers injuries. I'm not going to take that away from everybody. But if you look at in the playoffs, OG Anunoby, let's go to round 1. When Tom Thibodeau switched and put him on Joel Embiid, and he was playing front-facing defense, that made the difference. Even though Joel Embiid was playing like the man knee wasn't detached, he was he was still playing. Knee was bandage, had blood all in it, kneecap brace, everything all over. He was still balling out of control. But the difference when he put OG Anunoby, because Isaiah Hartenstein had no answer for him. And I kept saying, I wish Tibbs would just switch and put OG on Embiid. And he finally did it. And that made a difference. Then when you go to round 2, there was times where we didn't really have an answer offensively. It was Jalen Brunson having to go to work. And before OG got hurt, OG was able to get to the basket somehow and score. He was able to figure out a way to score. He was doing drive to the move to the basket, the step back, pop, shoot. He was making the shots. I seen that in the regular season as well. Diva Locks and I went to a game where the Knicks played Utah at the Garden. And there wasn't really no one doing anything. It was just ball was moving from left to right, back to the top of the key, to the left, to the right. There was no answer. And I think that with next season, because these guys have been playing with each other, and I also love that Randle was at the playoff games. Randle was hot out of his seat, at the edge of his seat. He wanted to be in those games so bad. He was itching to get in the game. I could tell he wanted to be out there so bad. But Randle is going to come back with a vengeance. He's going to prove why he deserved to not only get the bag, but he wants a championship. When you've been in the league as long as he has, at some point it becomes bigger than just getting the bag, right? You secure a bag, but what are you playing for? You should be playing for a championship ring. That's what winners do. They become champions. It can't just be about securing your money, your bag. Okay, great. Now you got the money. Now what? So everybody on this Knicks team, except for Randle with the asterisk, because that's in the making, you got your money. The bigger picture is, I'm sure every Knicks player is locked in and on the same level playing field as far as the agenda of where we're trying to go is getting a championship. And because these guys have been playing with each other for the past few seasons, they know how each other plays. They know how to play together. I'm confident they're going to correct a lot of things that were their Achilles heel, the slow starts, the bad third quarters. These things will get addressed. I'm very confident that they will. And I think that the Knicks have to continue being the underdogs and prove that last year wasn't a fluke, the year before last wasn't a fluke. Because again, that's another thing. I don't see this team going backwards. I don't see this Knicks team going back to where they were a few years ago, where they just was stinking up the joint and getting booed and they were just terrible and couldn't even make the playoffs. They're not going to do that. But I think that this team has to prove that they can go further than a second round, that they're not to be played with because we're right there. We're right there to become champions. And championship teams, it takes them a few seasons to get that championship trophy in the rings. It took Boston a few seasons to get it. It took Denver a few seasons to get it. And this team doesn't need a superstar to get a championship. You don't need this all-star caliber team to get it. You have your own championships. You have superstars, excuse me. You have Jalen Brunson. You have Julius Randle. You have OG Anunoby. We're not talking about players that they're okay. We're talking about guys who they can make things happen out there. And even with us not having a solid backup center, I truly believe this team can go far. I think the biggest thing, like we all know, is health. The health matters of every player on this team, because collectively we need all the soldiers to be able to get to the finish line. And then I think aside from health is how everybody plays individually and then how this team plays together. And then the other part of it too falls on Tibbs. Is Tibbs calling timeouts at the right time and not allowing leads to, go past 7 to 10 points? Is he substituting at the right times and putting players in and his rotations and this, that? Is he doing those things at the right timing? Is he and the coaching staff watching the minutes of players, making sure guys are staying healthy throughout the season? It's Tiz making the proper adjustments that are needed. Okay, if you lost to that team the last time you played them 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, last month, the next time you play them, let's make some adjustments so that we can beat them. Like watching film and getting better and having an answer in the playoffs for round 1 and round 2. You got to have an answer for these teams. You got to make adjustments. And I'm not questioning what he did in the past. I'm saying I'm talking about the things that the Knicks have to improve on for next season, things that need to be corrected, right? We're talking about from the smallest things on up. And it starts with the health of the team, the players, the continuity of the team playing together, and then it also falls on Tibbs, as Tibbs got a contract extension with the Knicks. So all of these things as a whole are what's going to carry this team, not just past a good regular season, which I've said this before, but this is another thing that we have to monitor, is throughout the regular season, the East can get stronger. The East can be a strong contending conference. So the Knicks have to be prepared for that as well. I don't think the focus should just be on beating Boston, but you got to worry about these other teams. You got to worry about, let's try to keep in the top 3, top 4 at best. Because winning 50 games is cool, but I think you should try to aim to win more than 50 games. So having a better regular season and then having a stronger postseason, because you can't lose gas. You playing round 1, you playing teams back to back every other game. Round 2, same thing. Got to get past those 2 rounds and get to the finals. And this team could do it. I'm for sure they can do it. Every team is beatable in the NBA. And this Knicks team is capable of doing it as underdogs, as they still are, because this team is still looked at as a laughingstock, just as Randle is, just as Jalen Brunson is. Because I love how Derek White made the Olympic team and Jalen Brunson didn't. I guess you have to be a champion or an Eastern Conference final team to get a little bit more respect on your name. That's okay. This Knicks team is on their way to getting that respect that they deserve, right? So Randle, we will monitor what he signs with this Knicks team for. And then I think after that, Randle, if I'm not mistaken, will get reevaluated in sometime in September with his shoulder. I'll be looking out. Listen, I don't care to look for any tapes on X or Instagram showing what players are doing in the gym. And I'm talking about Jericho Sims or anybody else. What I want to see is when the season starts, not preseason. That's all well. I'm talking about the regular season. I'm looking to see what players have done. And this goes across the board. I'm not even just talking about Jericho Sims, Precious Achiuwa. I'm talking about Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, who is a streaky shooter. Jalen Brunson not playing hero ball when we don't need that. OG Anunoby staying healthy, getting better. Mitchell Robinson staying healthy, getting better. This is across the board for the entire team. Deuce McBride. I'm looking to see what y'all do when the regular season starts. That's what matters. starting off the season strong, making a statement, staying strong come January, February, closing off the season strong, and not losing gas, but if anything, raising the bar of energy for the postseason. So we'll see what this Knicks team does. And yeah, I'll be looking out for Randle signing and more. Appreciate everybody in the chat joining me. Appreciate those who watch on the replay game. Um, we'll be back to talk more Knicks news. I haven't really caught much of the Olympics games. I've only seen highlights, I'm gonna be honest, because they come on at crazy, weird times that nobody could catch it if you have a job or a life. So I've only been catching the highlights, but from what I'm seeing, both the men and the women look great. So I'm sure they'll both take gold. I'm not doubting that. But yeah, we'll be talking more New York Knicks, more Julius Randle updates, and more. And yeah, WNBA when they come back. So yeah, until next time, everybody, thank you all for joining. I appreciate everybody. Have a great rest of your day and weekend, and have a great week as well. Until next